MC with you here from Sidewinder Jiu-Jitsu and another episode of Snake Pit Scattershooting. I'm going to get this video out to you so that you can take a very in-depth and detailed look at a little-known concept that I've used my entire jiu-jitsu career. I know sometimes these videos can be quite long and possibly even daunting, but if you're into the content, it will truly help you if you're actually able to sit through these videos. So like and subscribe, help me to grow the channel, help me to make these videos a little bit better. And I appreciate you all for your attention and your interest in the channel and your loyalty in looking at these videos. I hope they help you out. I've invested well over 15 years of my life to the pursuit of jiu-jitsu, and I consider myself more so a student of the game as opposed to an instructor. And I think it's that perspective and it's that thought process that has led me to seek out all the finite details of every technique. You know, it's different. It's one thing to be an instructor, and it's another thing to be a detail-oriented instructor. And I'm talking breaking it down to the very minutia of every technique and try to improve on everything. And that's kind of what I try to do. So today we're going to cover a concept. You'll hear me throw the term concept around a whole lot when it comes to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that's because in my pursuit of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I have found that most of the techniques, or what we call techniques, they're techniques, but they're not so much just an individual technique at all. It blends very well into a concept. And if you can understand a concept, you can sort of create your own universe or realm within Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now, what I mean by that is if you are just a technique-oriented fighter or practitioner, I don't want to say you're doing it all wrong, because you have your own way of learning, but I think you're severely limiting your ability to grasp the art. This art is very unique in that it happens quickly. The moves are very all the things that you do in jiu-jitsu are very fluid. It occurs in a fluid environment. So you're having to hit these things on the fly, much different than a lot of other martial arts. It's very fluid. The expanse of jiu-jitsu is truly phenomenal. The breadth of the jiu-jitsu universe, the depth of the jiu-jitsu universe is truly unbelievable. So if you try to look at it more in terms of concepts as opposed to individual techniques, I think you're going to have a lot more success, or at least I think I did, and I know my students do. So as opposed to trying to add an endless encyclopedia of techniques to your game, look at it in terms of concepts and try to just remember what I call the concepts or the laws of jiu-jitsu that I've discovered over the years. If you understand each of these laws and you understand each of these concepts, you're going to probably do a little bit better, because what you'll find out is that there's no individual technique that has to be used in every certain circumstance. If you understand some of the concepts that I've explained in Snake Pit Scattershooting, you're going to find that you can draw on those concepts in a multitude of ways. You don't have to know a specific technique for every circumstance. You can apply it once you understand the concept. Your body will sort of connect the dots. So today we're going to talk about one of the most important concepts that I have learned over my 15-plus year career in jiu-jitsu. I don't even really know what to call it, so we're just going to call it the elbow concept. And what I mean by that is, I'm going to show some stills here of exactly what I'm talking about, and it's the concept of drawing your body up onto your elbow. So if you can imagine just laying on your, let's say, right side, and you are literally entirely laying on your right elbow. So you're laying on the inner part of your right elbow. Your forearm is underneath your right buttock, and your hand is available to punch toward the back side. And you now have given yourself a very unique advantage over any of your opponents. What you've effectively done here is you've blocked your backside from what would be a would-be hook attack to establish back control, or any other thing that could be going on. And you've also given yourself a very unique ability, and that's the ability to invert. Because by pressing against the ground, you can lift your entire body up off of the mat. Now, it's an interesting thing because I see a lot of beginning jiu-jitsu practitioners, they will lay on their side and their arm is outstretched away from their body. And in doing so, what they've done is they've given themselves only one method of locomotion to get upwards, to get their hips up off the ground. Now, you understand in jiu-jitsu, in order to be able to defend a bottom side attack, and we're talking in terms of being on bottom here, okay? I have a whole other series we do on inversion later on that we'll cover. But right now, what we're talking about is the concept of being able to get yourself up off of the ground from an inferior position or a position where you're on bottom. If you don't have your elbow up underneath your body, you have only one method of locomotion, and that is to actually get your feet down on the ground and drive. In doing so, we get long. And what I mean by long is our body gets very lengthy. Your knees have to come away from your core, and that opens you up to additional attacks. Say if a person's in side control, they can go to mount, they can go to knee on belly, they can do anything they want to do up there. I teach all my students a very basic concept, which is another law we'll talk about later, and that's core protection. Core protection is essentially always being aware of the fact that you must protect the area between your hip line and your armpit. You got to keep a person's body, upper body, out of that area. And if you do that, you can maintain a relationship with your top side elbow, and you can help to keep a person from ever getting a dominant position. You'll always be able to roll, you'll always be able to turtle up. And if you apply the concept of the elbow concept, you'll always be able to generate upwards lift. And in doing that, you'll be able to defend against top side attacks. So looking at a couple stills, you're going to notice that the elbow is drawn completely and entirely up underneath the hip. You'll be laying on the hip. Now from here we can invert. We can lift our hips completely off the ground. We can do what you might call threading the needle to turn back over to turtle. But in doing so, the other thing that we're getting here is we're gaining a defense mechanism. So we're putting our elbow up underneath our hip. And when we put that elbow up underneath the hip, we are giving ourselves an arm to defend against a attack of the hooks from the backside. Now, what always happens here, you watch any tournament, you watch any youth. Now, I specifically talk about youth or beginning jiu-jitsu practitioners, because one of the hardest things to learn in jiu-jitsu when you first start out is how to go from a mounted position to roll. You always hear professors or coaches say, get to your side, get to your side, get to your side. Well, what they do is they turn to their side, and then the person climbs high and they get to a position called quarter mount. Some people call it S mount. Now your opponent is they're not in a full mount. They're quarter mounted on your body, and they're turned, generally set up very, very well for a variety of attacks, leading from everything from a collar choke to an armbar. Once that happens, you're kind of in a no man's land, especially if your elbow is away from your body, because you can only generate lift one way. You can only rotate to your hips or to your knees one way, and that's by getting long, losing protection on your core, and using your feet to roll you over. We see this happen a lot with youth. When they're escaping mount, they'll turtle, they'll roll to their belly, and what invariably happens out of that is the person that's attacking them back has a very easy back take for additional points, or in the course of MMA or a street fight or whatever you want to call it, you've given up your back. While technically you were sound in rolling to your side and then trying to get to your belly, you were deficient on your ability to prevent the hooks from going in. So there's a variety of ways to do that, and there's a lot of techniques out there, individual techniques. You'll hear people say, never turn to your stomach, never give up the hooks. Well, that's easier said than done, especially if you're in combat or if you're being hit, or a variety of other things may be going on. If you maintain the elbow relationship, where you draw the elbow up underneath you, and I've referred to the manner of doing that as being the dead leg. You're going to see in a photograph right here where I am demonstrating the dead leg drag. Okay, that's going to be bottom leg, or whichever leg you choose. So if you're laying in a mounted position, whichever leg you choose, one leg's going to go straight. That's imperative that leg stays straight to prevent the opponent from digging a hook up underneath you. And then you have a drive leg. Now that drive leg is right up by their butt. You're going to generate lift. You're going to lift your hips up off the ground. You're going to turn to your side. And in doing so, when you turn to your side, you are going to draw your elbow up into that space. Now, if you've done everything correctly, when your body settles back down, you should be laying squarely on your left elbow or your right elbow, whichever one. At that point, you've given yourself an excellent advantage against your opponent because you can generate lift. You've also taken away a very good attack point for your opponent from a dominant position. Often you will find that opponents will grab your arm that's hanging out while you're laying on your side, and they'll pull it across your body and they'll put you flat back out on your back. Now, why do we do it here? A lot of times you hear, why do we draw the elbow? A lot of times you hear coaches have taught their people to turn to one side, push the knee, escape the hips. Well, the reason we do that is exactly what I said. Your arm is out, and when you leave that arm out there dangling around, you're giving them a good attack point, you're giving them a pivot point, you're giving them the ability to flatten you back out. And often we see people successfully get to their side, especially if they're being outpowered, outmatched as far as muscle goes. They will get to their side successfully, their elbow's out, and the opponent will lift the elbow up, and they'll put them flat back on their back, and all that work was for nothing. So efficiency goes out the window. So at this point, being up on your elbow, now you can generate twice as much lift. You can maintain a core protection position by keeping your knees close up to their butt. And you can generate space by hipping out or turning or anything that you need to do at that particular moment. So being in this position is extremely advantageous for the escape. The question at this point is how do we go ahead and complete the escape? The answer to that question can be found in multiple responses as far as how you move your body. Often we see people choose to turn to turtle. In doing so, we give up the back, we give up the hooks. Now, it's much easier to defend if you're laying up on your elbow because by default, when a person's in quarter mount, they already have one hook completely in. The problem with that is they have to get you up enough to get flat on your back and get the bottom side hook in. Now that becomes extremely difficult when a person's laying on their elbow because they have already got a built-in defense for that bottom side hook to come in. This is where it was important way back in step one where we talked about lifting our hips, turning, drawing the elbow up underneath you, and then settling back down. Extremely important because as we lift it up, we already put our defense in place 3 to 4 steps ahead of when they were going to be trying to seat that bottom side hook after realizing they've gotten failed attempts at anything else from the quarter mount position. So now we've got a dilemma. Do we turn to turtle, which we often see inexperienced grapplers do, and they give up their back, or do we turn inward and we create space? Now, in one of the videos that was posted just probably days ahead of this video, you'll see a video you can refer back to called Dead Leg. Title aside, but it's something along the lines of dead leg. And in that video, we describe exactly how to create enough space and turn inward and some sweep options out of it. But this concept still holds true. Now, largely what we're talking about here is the concept of getting up on your elbow from a defense position. If you will use this elbow concept when you're in an inferior position, always bottom side, when you go to turn, you will find an extremely higher success rate in your defense and your ability to move. You're also going to find that you can elevate your hips very, very high. It's going to open up a lot of attack options from a semi-inversion attempt or maybe even a full inversion attempt. And if you have issues getting inverted or you've ever wanted to get inverted, this is going to be a concept that you're going to have to master, especially for being if you're a larger practitioner. Now, myself, I've always ranged between 200 and 220 pounds. I found it extremely difficult to get inverted if I did not use this concept. Now, the longer you do it, the easier it'll get. You'll develop more core strength and be able to do it. But this particular concept will help you to maintain core protection. It'll also help you to get to your side and escape the mounted position without being forced to go to turtle or to give up your back and allow a person to sink their hooks. So all in all, that's about the content of this video. I wanted to keep it fairly short, and I wanted to kind of cover that entire concept of drawing your elbow up underneath you and just how important it is. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe. God bless.